Thank you so much for letting us into your homes for another week of shows. We're so grateful. The Beat with Ari Melber starts right now. Hi, Ari. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Nicole. Have a great weekend. Thanks so
You too.
much. Welcome to the Beat, everyone. I'm Ari Melber, and we are watching what are clearly flashing red warning signs in this economy as managed by President Trump, who famously ran on the economy, on jobs and prices and people's well being. He's been doing a lot of other things with his agenda, with his priorities, but that, of course, was a big part of the campaign last year. And now the fears are that there could be a downturn, that Republicans don't want to ride bad jobs numbers and high prices into what are going to be midterms now just over a year away. And the issue here is facts. We have all watched our politics and propaganda turn more and more on what we might charitably call something other than reality. And yet, certain realities, especially when it comes to people's livelihoods, their jobs, whether they have money in the bank and money coming in from an employer, that can't just be propagandized or podcasted away. And that brings us to the top story right now, the brutal new jobs report that shows hiring stalling out in America. Only about 20,000 jobs added. That is basically a small number and is also, and this is important in how this economic stuff tends to work, a lot lower than what was expected. So you can see universal headlines there, warning signs, slowdown. It's the first jobs report as well since the reality issue came up on jobs. Donald Trump has been caught lying more than any other modern politician. Washington Post actually kept account for many years. It's not a criticism, it's a fact that he lies all the time. And in the second term, he's been more brazen about trying to get other people to lie for him, even in the career civil service. And so he actually ousted the person who had the bad news on these same jobs reports before. But firing the people giving you the bad news, hoping to distract, that's not really working. In fact, here's how it's even playing on Fox Business.
Weakness in the job market.
22,000 jobs added in the month of August. That was much less than the expectation of 75,000 guys.
There's a labor crisis.
So it's a weaker than expected number, and these revisions are pretty brutal.
So there's a lot of concern.
You may have more of a deflationary situation there, which I thought all along. By the way, a history lesson, folks. That's what we had in 1930s.
Reference there to the Great Depression, weak, brutal. Trump's labor secretary is doing a version of what Trump did, basically saying maybe these numbers aren't real or they don't mean anything. Take a look.
Do tariffs have anything to do with this slowing job market?
Unemployment is still holding steady. Statistically, it's non-existent.
Statistically, it's a problem. A labor secretary trying to sort of use what are fancier words, and there are debates over, of course, economic numbers, but basically argue to everyone, including even straightforward questions there on the financial news networks, that what you see isn't real. Out in the markets, out in the job market as well, people find it very real. And Trump is in negative territory already. He talks about a lot of different topics. There's a lot of other things going on, of course, that are covered, but he's down 15 on jobs already, down 30 on inflation and prices, which again was the issue where he attacked the incumbent Biden-Harris administration to great effect. And President Biden himself acknowledged there was a price and inflation problem. We all lived through that. The question is, how's the medicine going? Did the guy who ran on fixing that get anywhere? Or is it status quo, meaning Donald Trump has a Biden-level economic problem, or is it even worse? The big thing was that he was going to make your economic life better and daily purchases more affordable.
And I went on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. A vote for Trump means your groceries will be cheaper. It'll also bring your grocery bill way down. I have more complaints on groceries.
Groceries. Well, let's look at the prices. They're up. 90% of Americans say they are currently worried about the price of groceries. Axios puts it this way. For a president whose credibility on the economy has always been his strongest asset, the prospect of the bottom falling out is uniquely dangerous. Again, if this is his thing, he ran on it and wants to be judged on it, that's a problem. And it's not the only one. There are protests over the troops in the streets. There are judges saying Trump exceeded his power on that, and tariffs, which relate to the economic problems and feed uncertainty that neither the job nor stock markets want. There's the roiling Epstein scandal, which took on a new chapter this week with Republicans pushing to override the House leaders who were trying to back up Trump with secrecy while we heard the moving presentation of testimony of those victims, many of whom said it's not politics, but it is a Trump DOJ failure. The economy, though, as we all know, is the mood music for all of this. And if people are really upset about groceries and really concerned that there is a kind of endless, unfathomable trade war that even judges from both parties, appointed by presidents of both parties, say he might not even have the power to wage, well, that sets things on a different course as Americans pay attention again here in this beginning of the fall. I want to bring in Maya Wiley, former SDNY civil prosecutor and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and Jelani Cobb, who is Dean of Columbia Journalism School, staff writer for The New Yorker and MSNBC analyst. Welcome to both of you. Jelani, you know a lot about journalism, so much they have you running the most renowned journalism school. And first and foremost, we look at sources. Sometimes it's data, it's hard facts. Sometimes it's what experts or credible people say. What do you see here in the sources, in the underlying facts of what is at least a troubled Trump economy?
So, I mean, I think that this is indicative of, a bigger trend. If we go, I mean, there are many examples, an abundance of examples. But do you remember Hurricane Dorian back in 2019, or Sharpiegate, where the data said one thing, but Trump said something else, and so he just used a magic marker to change the data? This is the same thing that we saw, last month with the firing of the chief economist for Bureau of Labor Statistics. The data said something. They didn't like what the data said. If we wanted to look at that theme further, this was the crux of the fireworks that you saw yesterday with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., and his testimony. Most of that conflict was around data and what the data said, and wanting to have a contrary opinion that wasn't supported by data. It is a fundamental thing. I can add that it's not a coincidence that we've seen so many conflicts directed at journalism and at higher education, places that rely on a belief in objective truth and facts and empiricism.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of what ties it all together. And Maya, those of us in what was once called the reality-based community would prefer that we started with shared reality and then had our public debates and made our policies from there. But you've both done a lot of work in the field of social justice, also been a candidate yourself. Does it matter that the economy, as James Carville says, is everything, and does break through more than, say, lies potentially about the vaccine wars?
Let's remember, most people who show up at the polls are showing up at the polls and voting based on how they're doing, how they're feeling, how confident they are, and what candidate they think is going to help solve the problems they have, or continue to make sure, if they like how things are going, that it keeps going better. And that's why all those clips you showed about Donald Trump and what he said on the campaign trail, playing to how is it going for you with your grocery costs, right? Well, now we know how it's going with grocery costs right now, which is it's getting more expensive thanks to Trump's tariffs, which is, what economists have been saying for a while, which is we're going to send costs up. People are going to spend more for soap. Aria, I was just at a state fair in rural New York. And I was buying silver jewelry because I like silver jewelry. And the man and his wife, who this is their small business, they had their table out. And as we were chit-chatting, as I was buying my earrings, he said, I may not be here next year. And I said, well, why not? And he said, because silver is going up 40%. If that's the conversation I am having at a county fair, Donald Trump has a problem. Because what we're hearing, remember, 68% of rural voters voted for Donald Trump. We're already seeing he's still popular with a lot of those voters, but one recent poll that just came out showed that he's down in overall net approval by 6 points already with rural voters. But this is why, because of people, and we what we know from the economists is the people who are going to feel it the most are the people who are already struggling. Well,
Right.
those are
Absolutely.
some of the people Trump so proudly, said he activated and got out to vote. And those are the people who are going to have the biggest pain points. And we're going to see it also with that, with what he did with budget, what he's doing with cutting programs, how already 2.4 million people are going to find it harder because they're going to start losing their SNAP benefits. That's food on the table. And what we forget is those people, a lot of them are working and their families and their kids. This is not going well, but it's not going to go well because what everyone is going to understand is whether or not they're struggling more or their lives are getting better. And all that we're hearing, even anecdotally, and even if you're just out in the street, is it's getting harder.
Yeah. And the reference to county fairs, Sharpie, that one. The reference to county fairs, I know that excites Jelani because the New Yorker has many cartoons in the county fair pantheon that you'll see a pig in a top hat. You'll see a pig going to a dinner. Go ahead.
By the way, I can also attest, I was at the Maryland State Fair last weekend. So, I was out there doing my level best to have a kind of wholesome American experience at the county fair.
I didn't know we had such fair fans here. Did you? Jelani, did you get any jewelry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get no, actually, the guy, I saw something I liked, but the guy told me he had already sold his best earrings to Maya. So
I'll tell you this, and this is a fact. I have seen Jelani Cobb in expansive neck jewelry, what sometimes will be called a chain or bling. So that's a story for another day. Before we go, Jelani's coming back. Maya, before we go, I'm curious what you think with the Epstein of it all. I mentioned that in the lead, that this has been a tough week on a story they wanted to bury. We've discussed it. I think a lot of people, how could you not be moved by the women speaking out, which again, not political or partisan, and several of them said so, but a failure of what they view as the government, primarily Republican prosecutors, a Trump cabinet member. I mean, that's just who was in charge. Your thoughts on that before I lose you tonight?
Yeah, well, I think you said it best. What people care about is how they feel and whether they think government is helping them and serving them or hurting them. And this is a news story that's about that very same thing. I mean, if Donald Trump won on a platform that said he was going to blow up the deep state, he keeps demonstrating that he is the deep state, and he's demonstrating it to something as basic as whether women are safe from sex trafficking. Actually, they were not women at the time. And so to not care about victims who are people's sisters and mothers and daughters is exactly the kind of thing that plays to the same demand from so many Americans who keep us safe. Well, he's not keeping us safe. Make our lives better. Well, he's not making our lives better. And that's what he has to confront as someone who's saying, continue to support me to control government.
Yeah. Maya, thank you very much. Wishing you a good weekend and good luck out there at all the fairs, wherever you find them. Jelani comes back. We're going to turn to these tech moguls giving Trump a dear leader kind of welcome.
Thank you for being such a pro-business, pro-innovation president.
I also want to thank you.
We're very excited to see what you're doing.
Making it possible for America to win.
How much are you spending, would you say, over the next few years?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, gosh, indeed. And Donald Trump making more moves, confirming his interest in trying to change who's even running for mayor in New York. Is he scared of the liberal you see on your screen? And John Tester will join us tonight. It's tractor time. We'll explain. But first, a scorecard on why Trump lost so much in court this week. I'm going to show you that in 90 seconds. There is so much going on, it can be hard to keep it straight. Sometimes I hear from you, news viewers, who say, how do you keep it all straight? And is Donald Trump winning? Is he losing? How does the second term compare to the first? We go back to the evidence and the facts. And I can tell you, sometimes it seems like some of the media or some of the internet isn't doing that, and it all becomes a blur. So let me walk you through in plain English. I promise this will be clear, easy, and interesting to some, why Donald Trump is losing more now in the courts than he was in his first term, including this string of losses this week.
A federal judge is blocking plans from the Trump administration.
A federal judge ruled against the Trump administration.
A federal appeals court on Friday said Trump went beyond his executive authority.
Many of the president's global tariffs are in doubt, as you might know, following that high-profile court ruling.
Well, a judge says President Trump's use of the National Guard during immigration protests here in L.A. is illegal.
Trump is losing more because he's doing more things than before, than the first term, that are clearly illegal. So let's look. A federal appeals court ruled most of those tariffs, basically the entire trade war, is illegal. And that means the entire tariff system could be paused and canceled. He gets a little time to appeal it. That's only fair. But right now, he's lost that case. Another one, the National Guard. Illegal. The way he deployed them in LA amidst the immigration protests was an abuse of authorities that he does not actually have. That matters because if that case holds, it will limit his ability to try that same move in the future. And there are many experts who say in other countries, we've seen leaders do that to interfere with elections, for example. Another loss on misusing a wartime act, basically war powers, to try to deport Venezuelan immigrants. That's the American Enemies Act. He lost that case. And he lost his bid to oust an official at the FTC because he didn't have the authority to fire that person. We're going to see X's on those kind of issues because Trump keeps trying to fire people like this is The Apprentice when, as you may know, a lot of the federal government, a lot of the military has government employees that the president doesn't personally oversee. They're supposed to have more independence. Over on the right, you see the X for ruling against his effort to basically misappropriate or swipe about $5 billion in foreign aid. Now, we're following all of this. The X's reflect what's been happening. If he wins, we'll show you that as well. And there was a federal appeals court ruling for Trump, a win on an environmental case where basically he did have the authority, because it depends, to try to scale back what was a large amount of climate funding that he, under his administration, does not want to put into those more green climate programs. That's a ton of losses just this past week. Immigration is an area where he's losing in different ways because there's overall questions about deportation. There's questions about his effort to rewrite the Constitution's definition of citizenship, something that no president can do. The Constitution isn't rewritten by a single person. Otherwise, we wouldn't have one. And then we had a judge saying the administration also cannot just send children to Guatemala. So that held back. That's something where he actually got caught and the people that he wanted to send aren't going there. Another says he's forbidden from deporting that immigrant Garcia, at least until more evidence is heard. And that comes as a follow-on to the Supreme Court case he lost, which is why Garcia was brought back to the country. So that's what's happening. And if you're kind of leaning back sometimes from the media or your phone and going, it seems like he's getting away with everything, he's not. If you're looking at a headline where he's claiming war powers or something else, sure, we can report that he said it, but we also have to, in journalism, do the follow-up report that he lost it, and he doesn't have that power, and that judges still have the last word on what's legal in our constitutional democracy. Jelani Cobb is back. Your thoughts both on the substance, which we can put the card back up. It's pretty clear substantively losing court, but also what I mentioned, which is that weird feeling that I think some people have that nothing matters or he's getting away with it all when in some areas he's clearly not.
Yeah, I think that it's important, that you keep in mind, the kind of broader, W and L columns on this. And, the pattern here has tended to be an audacious / outrageous and often unprecedented attempt to use executive power in a way that it had not been used before or had previously been thought of as unconstitutional And the sheer brazenness of it has shocked people, often frightened people. And then the administrative and bureaucratic processes, which are much slower than the actions of the executive branch, start to kick into gear, and they generate smaller headlines. So the headline about cutting $2 billion from Harvard, for instance, is much more attention grabbing than the headline about the judge declaring that he did not have the authority to do that. And so we've seen that kind of time and time again, and people testing, what we once referred to as guardrails that have sometimes held up. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the other part of this, which is that there's always the question about whether or not this administration will actually follow judicial orders, whether or not the declaration that something is unconstitutional will actually hold any sway in determining what they actually do.
Well, I think you raise an important point because they've clearly pushed that. The Guard, the deployment of the Guard is the most intense example. They got away with or had time doing something that has now been ruled illegal. And then they're doing it in D.C., which is different legally because it is more federal. So they have greater authority there, but even that's limited by a month. And so as they test that, you're raising the question of whether the judges in this country, and ultimately the Supreme Court, which does have emergency abilities, meaning it can rule fast on certain things, do you think they have to change more to keep up with this? Because you don't need to be a legal scholar on separation of powers, Jelani. Anyone who's been a parent or a guardian or babysitter knows that if you tell a kid, well, you can't do that, but they get to do it all night or all weekend, they take away the obvious lesson of, oh, cool, so I kind of can do that. There's just going to be words about it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's always the kind of maybe you say I can't do it, but what can you do to stop me? And that's been the lesson, I think, of the first administration, where it was do a lot of things and you'll get away with some portion of them, which is why I think that we've seen, the kind of shotgun pattern of so many things happening on so many different fronts. And it winds up being, or at least being perceived by people who are critical of these kinds of actions as overwhelming. And it's easy to believe in that context that they're just winning, they're just getting away with everything.
Yeah, understood. And we wanted to kind of broaden out, look at this big picture, because it's not just about any particular phrase in a law, but what are we doing as a democracy, which is why you've been a great expert for us tonight. I appreciate that. Wish you a good weekend, Jelani.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Yes, sir. Coming up later in the program, something interesting is happening. There is a progressive, controversial candidate, Democratic nominee for mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani. Probably heard of him. He's getting under Trump's skin. And he's got the president, who should be busy with other things, talking about trying to interfere in the race to stop him. Why does this man scare the president and the Republican Party? We have something on that for you later tonight, plus the backlash of these tech billionaires who once said they would be changing the way the world works. Now they can't even get out of the kind of MAGA shakedown that you have to do where you're praising Donald Trump just because he wants to meet with you. And as we showed you, Jon Tester addressing the power grab and the populism live from the tractor next. It's the economy, stupid. We've heard that for decades. Trump has some economic failures on his hands, the new bad jobs numbers, the inflation that he said he'd beat and he hasn't, and a tariff policy that is not only not working, but is now endangered in the courts. Republicans are hearing about all of this from voters.
Who's responsible for establishing tariffs in our country?
Well, right now the president has taken that authority, but I'm asking we
I really feel that this is a terrible tax that's going to be placed upon the citizens of the United States.
Shame! Shame!
That's what's happening out in real America, as they like to say, real workers, voters, consumers. The markets are up. And The reason the S&P 500 is up is largely because of a small handful of companies in tech that are responsible for an outsized share of the gains. It is inequality supersized, and those same tech leaders were just at the White House where they sounded a lot like a Trump cabinet meeting, which again is not how independent businesses usually relate to a president.
Thank you for incredible leadership. Thank you for being such a pro-business, pro-innovation president. It's a very refreshing change.
It's incredible to be among everyone here, particularly you and the First Lady.
What's coming out of the White House is making it possible for America to win.
We're very excited to see what you're doing to make all of our companies and our entire country so successful.
I also want to thank you for helping American companies around the world.
You've unleashed American innovation and creativity.
And on it went. Those folks are getting a lot richer. In fact, as mentioned, the market value of the tech companies did go down with all the uncertainty about the tariffs, but they are back up high. That's the top 7 of them. But most other companies where a lot of Americans work are struggling. The Times reports the tariffs have also, for example, cost the tractor company John Deere over $300 million. Trump promised benefits, but the way he's been waging the trade war, it's been hurting American companies, especially in the heartland, and especially those who aren't part of that crypto tech bubble that his elitist administration and friends increasingly seem to be obsessed with. So we are going out to a tractor and a person. Former Senator Tester is there with us next. As we look at the economic picture out there, we're joined by veteran Democratic Senator Jon Tester from Montana, also an MSNBC analyst. Good day. And first, just show us where you're at. Give us a panorama.
So I'm in the most beautiful spot of Montana. It's the part east of the Rocky Mountains that's flat, as you can tell. My camera's hold. Hopefully you can see that. And this is farm country. Few cows, but mostly farm country. Winter wheat made this area, and continues to. And we're in process right now. At least some of the folks here are putting in winter wheat for next year's crop.
Yeah. And when you see the real way that the tractor industry and other American jobs are affected by the tariffs and the related uncertainty, which is Trump's sort of economic style, roundly criticized, how is that hitting home, and how can your party seize on it, do you think?
Yeah, well, what's occurring in agriculture right now is predictable, entirely predictable. When you put tariffs on a lot of the inputs that agriculture uses, it's going to drive up costs for those farmers. And when you put those tariffs on, it also dries up some of the markets that we and we need to ship. We need to ship grain outside this country. We raise more grain and soy than we can use. So we need those foreign markets. Well, the tariffs also raises heck with those foreign markets, and other countries are going, well, if you're going to put tariffs on our products, we're not going to take yours. And those products are commodities, are agricultural commodities, and so that drives the prices down on the side where we're trying to make some money, and raises the input costs, raises our expenses, and it doesn't leave any margin for error. And in fact, in a lot of cases today, farmers are raising our products at a net loss. And so what happens then? Well, the federal government comes in and says, well, we'll write you a check. That's not sustainable, and it's not right. And so instead of using taxpayer dollars, we ought to be dependent upon the marketplace. And right now, this administration is screwing up that marketplace.
Yeah. And Trump has a reputation for playing a business guy in a reality show, but he's done a lot that attacks the free market. Do you think that's breaking through? Is that a problem? And you may go in and out on the tractor, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think it's absolutely a problem. I mean, I think you see Trump, calling people socialists when in fact he is doing things that are very socialist, taking percentages of companies, and if they do trade in China, for example, or if they get a grant from the U.S. to bring manufacturing back here, he wants the federal government to have a share of that kind of company. If that sounds right to your listeners, man, it's not right by me. I mean, that is socialism, and it shouldn't be done. And but this is the way this administration is. They say the election's stolen, and then they turn around and try to do things to steal elections. And they say that the trade market is just fine, when in fact it isn't. They say our health care is getting better, when in fact it is not. They're taking away health care from the people who most need it. And so we're seeing this administration over and over again say one thing and do exactly the opposite. And I think it's exactly what's happened in this tariff stuff, where they're saying, well, the foreign countries are paying the tariffs. They are not. It's American consumers that are paying those tariffs. It's the biggest tax on American consumers that I've seen probably in my lifetime.
Yeah. You always went your own way. Some people like that about you. Some people have their own opinions about that. But we don't have as many Democrats from your neck of the woods. And so I'm curious if you look at a time where Trump taps into economic anxiety. They talk about the populism word. I think you've been a populist in a different way. And then look at the headline that I'm going to show, that 25% of people now say they can improve their standard of living. Most people don't feel that they can even have a chance. In other words, record low, because people have lost the ability to do that in their real lives. They see the economy, rigged against them. What do you think your party needs to do on that, and to be populist, if that's clearly part of the challenge today?
Ari, there's a lot of folks out there that are unhappy. You just put some of the statistics up. There's a lot of Republicans out there that are unhappy with the Republican Party right now. The Democratic Party needs to show folks a place to land. The economy. You got to figure out ways to stop this inflation. You got to figure out ways to make home prices more affordable, and you got to figure out ways to make healthcare more accessible and more affordable. This administration has done the opposite on all those things. So the Democratic Party needs to come up with a plan. It's not that tough. I can even help them do that. Come up with a plan, a platform to run on that lowers costs, that makes housing more affordable, and makes healthcare more accessible and more affordable too. Plus, there's some other things out there too. I mean, pushing away our allies doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Our strength comes from our allies, and this president's pushing away our traditional allies and embracing, the dictators of the world's perspective. I just think that in rural America, I don't think that's going to fly. But you've got to give the people out who are unhappy with the Republican Party right now a place to land, and Democrats haven't done that yet.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, again, not only coming from you and your perspective, and a Democrat who's won out in red states, won with a big gap from national Republican polling and finish, but doing it from a tractor. In television, we like a good shot. I'm going to be honest, and we appreciate it. So John Tester, I'll be seeing you soon, longtime senator, MSNBC analyst, live from the Montana Tractor. Have a good weekend. We're going to finish a break. When we come back, why does this liberal mayoral candidate scare Trump so much? That's next. Why is Donald Trump getting so involved and concerned about a New York mayor's race? Remember, there's progressive mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, who won the Democratic nomination, but Trump and Republicans, after first suggesting maybe they wanted to make him the face of the Democratic Party, like he'd be easy to beat, now they're worried he's going to win. It was, of course, the Democratic former governor, Andrew Cuomo, who lost the primary but is still running. Indeed, this is a somewhat bizarre recent online ad he put on TikTok where he's riding a roller coaster alone. He won't get out. The sitting mayor lost the nomination but is insisting on running unless he gets something, is according to the report. So you have this four-way race, and the push now is whether the Trump folks can somehow get or engineer the other Democrats to drop out to thwart the now frontrunner Mamdani.
I don't think you can win unless you have one-on-one, because somehow he's gotten a little bit of a lead. So I would like to see two people drop out and have it be one-on-one. And I think that's a race that could be won.
Trump, ever blunt, admits that he has a vision that he would like, and that he thinks if you can change the number of candidates, they might be able to stop Mamdani. So apparently they are afraid that this populist liberal will become a new face of the Democratic Party and run a big city that affects Trump and maybe a lot of his friends and donors. And the New York Times reports Trump officials were looking at trying to entice Adams to get out of the race by making him, ambassador to Saudi Arabia.
I think it's outrageous. This is an affront to our city's democracy. Trump is making that very clear, that this is his choice for mayor of New York City. It's Andrew Cuomo.
A lot of big fights here over that race. We will keep an eye on it and be back in a moment with some politics. Welcome to Mavericks with Ari Melber, and I'm excited about this one. We're joined by the Emmy-winning writer, producer, critically acclaimed actor, Lena Waithe.
Thanks for having me, man.
I've wanted to do this for a minute, and now we're doing it, so I'm really happy.
Yes, long time coming.
We saw you in what at the time I don't think was a widely seen character in the role you played in Master of None, right?
Yeah, Denise.
Let's take a little look at that relationship.
Okay. Dude, she ain't text you in 2 days. I mean, she don't want to go. This is a very clear and unambiguous situation.
Or maybe she really likes me and she's nervous. And she's sitting around with 3 of her buds, trying to figure out what to text this guy. What about that scenario?
No, she doesn't like you, man. Oh, gosh. That's good times. Me, Aziz, and Eric Wareheim was a good trio.
And that felt different than how the character might have been written or how you might have done it if you were playing someone who was a straight, quote unquote, friend of his.
Yeah, but also what I love about Aziz is that he would take elements of us and also not be afraid to write that into the work. And I tend to have a little bit of that cadence of just being really honest and just accepting the reality as it is.
With you, did your art help you get there with your identity, with what comes across as a kind of strength, or was that always there?
I'm always in that evolution. Who I was last year is not who I am this year. Seasons change, so people should too. And I think my mission is to continue to not necessarily be a better version of myself, but to become a more authentic version of myself. And I think people kind of get caught up in those terms of New Year's resolutions and I want to be a better me. I just want to be as much of me as I can possibly be. And that's going to be a lifelong journey.
There is a funny thing where, of course, as a child, you're just picking up the basic skills of life. But then in adolescence and identity, what you're talking about, you can get so pulled by the desire to please or to conform that it takes the next stage of being older than that to do what you just said, which is, oh, who am I?
I think for me, it was more about not buying it. I think society tells us a lot of things. And we live in a very particular society, a patriarchal society, a capitalist society, a white-leaning society. And it's so interesting if you're thinking about, people who don't even subscribe to the binary. There's a reason why there's an attack on people who don't subscribe to it, because we live in a patriarchal society. So people get upset with someone who identifies as non-binary because they want to know, how are we supposed to treat you? Are you a first or second class citizen? Do we pay you less? You know what I mean?
So say more about unpack binary even as how you would
gender, really. For me, I think of queer not just in terms of sexual orientation, but in terms of not following the rules society has set up for me. Because that's the thing with identity. You're told if you're a woman, if you're Black, if you're queer, if you're born poor, if you're, born to a certain religious group, that there are certain ways that society treats you. There are certain bins that they put you in. The caste system is real. People are told that you aren't supposed to be yourself, but rather you're supposed to be what society tells you to be.
We want to do a lightning round with you before you move on. Deep dish, pizza, or New York style?
See, I'm going to get in trouble for this because deep dish is a little bit like a lasagna in a way, because it is kind of thick and it's a tough one to
Tell the truth, Lena.
Here's the deal. You can take 2 or 3 bites and be done. The New York pizza, I can actually finish it. So deep dish for life because I'm from Chicago, but people are starting to realize even a lot of Chicagoans don't eat deep dish.
So can I quote you accurately?
Here's the deal.
It sounds like you're saying deep dish is overrated.
I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that, okay? Don't get me kicked out of my own city. But, we are in New York and there's nothing better than, the cool thing about New York style pizza is you can eat it standing up.
On the go.
On the go, baby. Deep dish, you got to sit down, you got to make a plan, you need a knife, you need a fork, you need to be able to, there needs to be a candle burning at the center of the table. It's a situation,
Okay.
it's involved.
Failure means
Liberation.
success means
Whatever you want it to mean, I think society has told us what success is because we live in a capitalist society. So a capitalist society wants you to always be chasing what? Capital. So success has been told to us that it means a big house, fancy cars, a lot of great clothes. They've also tried to convince us that it means fame. They think, because then people think all of those things mean happiness. That's why I think a lot of people worship and resent celebrities. But the truth is success can be, working a gig and, that makes you happy, or bagging groceries, or, being a nurse, or being a teacher, or driving a bus, or making sure kids get across the street safely, and having a very simple home and no car at all, or one simple car to get you from point A to point B. I think we have to redefine success for ourselves and not feel the need to always be chasing something, hoping that it'll make us happy. Because once you get that thing, it'll become stale, and then you'll have to find something else to chase. So the mission is to slow down, walk easy, and to not need something outside of yourself to make you happy.
being a maverick means
Asking why all the time. I think in society, there are these sort of traditions, these rules, these ideas that we've been told are just the truth. And very rarely do people ask, why? Why is that? Why have we never had a woman president? Why is our society so white-leaning? Why are we in a capitalist society? Why is money always the thing that matters most to us? Why? And the thing is, we don't always have to have the answers, but it's good to always ask the question.
Thank you, Lena.
My guy, good to see you.
Great to have you.
Thanks, man.
Really great, and some big questions there. You can see it all at msnbc.com/Ari. That does it for us.